Joining us to measure up the messaging are Auckland University political marketing specialist Jennifer Lees-Marshman, John Ansell, the mind behind National's striking 2005 billboards and the past author of campaigns for parties across the political spectrum, and former Labour Party President Bob Harvey, whose political marketing career stretches back 36 years to the campaign that brought Norm Kirk to power. Welcome to you all. Jennifer, if we could start with you, I wonder whether you subscribe to what seems to be the received wisdom that Labour got out of the blocks very well last week. It had the better start to its campaign, but National regained the initiative with John Key's performance in the debate. Do you think that's a fair summary of where the two major parties have been?
It's reasonable. I'm not sure I agree. I think everybody was just a bit shocked by one particular poll which showed Labour's increase the margin of loss against National. So I'm not sure that that's entirely true. Labour's opening address wasn't particularly effective, although the beginning showed Helen being sort of touchy-feely with voters. It also showed her, after that, most of the broadcast was with her telling us how wonderful things were. It's all very well for her to preach that, but it doesn't mean the voters are going to agree.
It does suggest that the campaign is going to be very much focused on her as the executive, though, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's kind of a strange choice. If you look at parallels with the UK, when Tony Blair was losing his popularity, what they did was convey Team Labour. They tried to show the whole team was something the voters could vote for, and so to sort of offset Tony Blair's weaknesses. Now, I know Helen Clark is perceived to be a strong leader, but she's still been in power for 3 terms. All leaders in such a situation face problems of being out of touch and being arrogant, and simply communicating her, telling voters yet again why she's wonderful.
Do you think she has looked that way? She has looked out of touch and arrogant?
I think all leaders in that situation end up showing that. It's very difficult for them to convey anything else. To do so, they need to have really effective communication. That's just not come from Labour in this election.
John, you've been, on the other hand, quite publicly critical of the National Party campaign, advertising campaign. What in your view, is wrong with it?
Well, I try not to be publicly critical, but when I ask the question, it has to be said that both parties, I think, are doing sort of parallel campaigns. The Nats have got a sort of light blue billboard festooned with all sorts of paraphernalia on the one hand, and then a dark blue billboard with the leader on the other. Labour have got a bright red, the very effective Labour red, with all about keeping it Kiwi, which is, I think, a very effective line, but no logo and no leader on the billboards. And then in the press ads, they've got a white ad with a white Helen and the logo and the website. So I think I'm not just critical about National. I was actually praising the Greens.
And you have praised the Greens, yeah. But by general acclaim, they seem to be the ones who've nailed it. What's so good about their campaign?
Well, the simplicity, the single-mindedness. They've distilled their reason for being down to making the planet fit for your children, which is a pretty worthy sort of a pitch, I think. They're not burdened with having to, run the economy and do all the things that the big parties have to do, so they can afford to be a bit more single-minded. But I think, full marks for what they've done.
Now, Bob, I did describe in that montage the Labour branding as too dull to parody. Do you think that the campaign in general has maybe lacked a little creative spark?
I think it's so dull, it makes my bloody teeth ache. It's so unbelievably close to each other that they have to be smarter than that. I mean, I've done it to others, and I've done it to myself too with 6 elections. So I've kind of observed the billboard campaigns, which I love, actually. I think you can win or lose almost in the billboard campaign. But I think that the typography, I think I agree with the Greens, but who cares? We only care about Clark and Key wrestling in mud. We really want them to show us if they can do it. And I think Labour was probably in shitter's ditch, to be honest, if I can use that term. I'm sure you know that. And then came the crash, then came the financial disaster. And it is a blessing in disguise, because now Key, I think, will look somewhat as a mismanager of not only his own life and the loss of his own shares, but judgment. And so here comes Labour running to the tape.
Well, and actually, that's rather a nice segue into an ad that came in too late for us to put in that montage, but which I think will be quite interesting and quite controversial. This is Labour's new TV ad. It targets John Key. Perhaps we could look at it now.
This is the story of 2 National Party guys, John and John. John didn't like KiwiSaver. He said it was a glorified Christmas club. But John said it was going to be successful and not too bad. John said he would only make modest changes to KiwiSaver. But John would need to pay for his tax cut, so he wants to cut KiwiSaver in half. Can you really trust John, or John, in the tough times ahead? You know you can trust Helen Clark and Labour.
That's called A Tale of Two Johns, and it's backed up with this, which you may have seen arrive in your letterbox in the past 2 days, headed Don't Trust Keys Double Talk. It's pretty hard-nosed, Bob, isn't it? How's it going to go down with Labour voters, do you think?
I think Labour voters, the committed Labour voters, loathe the Tories, and they always have. I mean, we went to the Avondale markets a couple of weeks ago, and you could see who was there. They were generally Labour, Green and Māori Party. The fact is, Clark and the team have talked all of us up into believing the election has been close, closer when it wasn't close. And the media have bought into that and says it's going to be a tight, close race. She wants it a close race, and I think she now might get it a close race. If she gets 38, she pulls the Maoris in, she pulls the Greens in, they're already fodder. They're in there.
What do you think, John? What do you think? Because you, in the past, have not been shy about offending people with strong advertising messages.
No.
Is this the right thing for them to do?
Well, that message is directly taken from one that I did in the 87 election when I was working for Labour as well. You know, it was the soap campaign on radio. In the cities, Jim says he'll help farmers. In the country, he says he'll help farmers. In the cities, he says he won't. Which of these policies is the real policy, or does he have no real policy? Does the man who brought in SMPs deserve to be PM and all that stuff? And this is done by the same team that I worked with in '93. And they obviously realise that sort of approach, it does work. It does work to an extent. It clarifies the slippery John sort of idea. It's an extraordinarily galling position for Clark to take, because if I was them, if I was the Nats, I'd come back with sleazy Helen and just completely nullify it, because that has far more credibility than slippery John.
Sleazy, though.
Jennifer,
I mean EFA. I mean the
list is long.
The pledge gate.
We'll get to the EFA in the second half of the program. Jennifer, if I could bring you in, do you think this is risky?
It is risky, but it has the potential to raise the fears of those Labour voters who were wavering, who were thinking maybe they would give Key a chance. And what I imagine this has done is tap into the results of focus groups and polls which have shown them that underneath people wondering about forgetting Labour and going to National, that there's actually a fear about John Key. So they're targeting, particularly the direct mail, they're targeting that particular group of voters. And it may be enough to make the election a lot closer than may have been the case otherwise. But it is risky in that, as you say, National may simply rebut it by emphasising the weaknesses and problems with Helen Clark as well.
And as John points out, it's something they've been doing all year with the Slippery John meme. They've tried to get that into the media.
And their theme of, this one's about trust is tapping into that. So it's not just saying you can trust Labour, it's saying you can't trust National. It has an underlying attack underneath it.
I mean, Bob talks about Miss Leader. I mean, that's exactly what I would do if I was National. I'd say Miss MISS Leader, Miss MISS Manager. I mean, there's so much material.
You are a poet. Hold that thought, because we do have to go to a break now.
It's hard to understand. You can get the message, but when you read it, it really bogs down in bad copywriting.
Bob, we do have to go to a break now. And when we come back, Simon Pound surveys that least formal of public art forms, billboard enhancement.